Hello and welcome to Roger Quinn's exciting video on how to export an ePub from InDesign 5.5. Alrighty, what we're looking at here is my sample DL brochure. I have my front page and my back page set out as per usual, in fact using the template that I supplied in Blackboard that you guys can download if you wish, and some of you did for your DL brochure. Okay, so just clarifying, there's my front cover flap, the back part of my DL brochure, the inside flap, and of course the inside pages would be, the left there would be inside first page, the middle obviously, and the right hand side. If I just reveal the guides there for a minute, you'll see that that is indeed using the template that I supplied. Okay, but here is the slight mystery that I hope to explain with regards to exporting this as an ePub. Now let me reinforce once again, I'm using version 5.5. Okay, 0.5. It's not the same as version 5. It's different, and the main differences have to do with exporting ePubs. Yes, you certainly can export an ePub from version 5, but no, you can't use some of the same little tools that are built into 5.5 that makes it easier. So for you folks with version 5, you can either A, struggle with that, or B, find a computer, I don't know, for example, at university, and use 5.5 to do your final export, because it's actually easier. All right, so let's have a quick look at what happens if we just export this thing. I'll just hide my little extra bits there, as a standard ePub without thinking too much about setting it up properly. Okay, it's actually very straightforward. One goes to File, Export. Okay, File, Export, not Save As, but Export. And you get a choice of many things, PDFs, etc., but we're going to use ePub. Okay, ePub, not HTML. That's bad. ePub is good. Okay, and it should have a .epub file next to that. I'm just going to save mine. And yep, I'll just, for the moment, I'm going to use all the default settings. Okay, and off we go. Now on my computer here, it's set to launch this fabulous, fantastic Adobe Digital Editions, which quite frankly is a very crappy little ePub reader. Okay, so it doesn't quite show you exactly what you'd see on an iPad or a Kindle or something, but it gives you a close approximation. Anyway, I'll just zoom that larger, and we can get a bit of a sense of both the good and the bad of ePubs here. So I've just used the little tools here to enlarge or reduce my text, and I'll also just move the window around, and you can see automatically what that's doing is, and it should be doing this, it's actually squashing all that text around, because an ePub by default is flowable. Okay, our InDesign brochure in print base, of course, was set where we put things. When it's an ePub, it flows. Okay, and you can't control that because that's what it's meant to do. However, we do have a couple of things going on here that are a bit funky. Notice, if you will, that this is actually started with this bit of text, okay, paragraph styles in ePub format, which on my DL was in fact technically the first thing that did appear on the page, but really we wanted this to be our cover, okay, the right hand side, and if anything we wanted this article here, okay, the introduction text, etc., to be the first text that appears. So it's already done the wrong thing, but really when you think about it, it's doing what it thinks is correct, because remember, the ePub export by default is just seeing this whole page, and it sees this is page 1 and that's the first bit of stuff that it sees. So by default it does things in the order that it finds them. Now we don't really want that. We want to tell the ePub to have the articles in the order we want to see it. Okay. Now if I just quickly scroll through this, we'll see a few other things that are going on that are a little bit weird. Okay. Now this Adobe Digital Editions reader doesn't do a very good job of interpreting some of the things, particularly the pictures. Okay, now they are there, but it's had a bit of a hiccup. There, for example, we find my cover graphic, which is, and then mysteriously one of the back page graphics, and as I said, the first thing that's appearing is that. And there's a couple other things going on here too that are slightly problematic. Okay, at first glance you think, well, cool, that's great. It's picked up my formatting. It's used the color I've used, the fonts I've used. That's great. This is not so great, and the reason is because, fortunately on my computer, it can find these fonts and it displays them. If, however, this ePub was being viewed on a Kindle or an iPhone or an iPad or an Android or one of the other dopey things that you view ePubs on, we have no idea whether those devices have the fonts that we've used. So in actual fact, you really should be exporting your ePub to use default standard fonts that are in fact with no particular font associated. You should be sending it out with a font grouping or a font family. And there is a way of doing that actually back in InDesign so that it will use the most appropriate font for viewing on whatever device it ends up. Okay? So that's one thing I'm going to show you, and the second thing I'm going to show you, of course, is how to format the information so it appears in the order that you want to see it. Okay, and also we'll have a quick look at how to fix the problem of some of these images appearing at the wrong size. Okay, because ideally what I want these to do in my ePub is to appear at a more appropriate size for viewing on an e-reader. Okay, so now this is a really important thing to know about this process. Okay, we're going from a print-based design, which is this stuff, where we can have complete control over exactly what size everything appears, the look of things. Okay, and then we're going to this ePub format where we really don't have full control of everything. We only have partial control because we have to leave a certain amount of this open to whatever viewing device this will be on. Okay, so a certain amount of the design control we really don't have control over, so we have to allow for that. Okay, so let's find out how to fix this so it works a little bit better for our purposes. I'll just close that and I'll go back to InDesign and we'll have a look at the process to follow. Righto, first and foremost, be reminded that you need to set up paragraph styles for your text. Okay, now in my case here I've got fairly simple ones that I've used. Okay, I've basically got a heading which I've mysteriously called heading 1, and I've got subheadings which are this red text here, okay, which I've called heading 2. My body copy is called body copy, and I've got my picture captions which I've used throughout. My cover graphic, by the way, which is the one appearing on the right hand side, I've done that in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, I've used a special font there, but essentially that's come in as a picture. Okay, so it's not something that I've set in InDesign. Because I know that's going to cause a slight problem with my ePub export, I have off the side of the page here, okay, so something that won't print when I actually set it to print as a DL, but is available to use in my ePub, are two separate things I've made. One is a very much larger version of the main title graphic, and the other is just a block of text I've made in InDesign that is just repeating the main title information on my cover. And I've done this because I need to use this, okay, in my ePub to replace this Illustrator graphic. Okay, and the reason why I've made this square is because that's a more suitable format to appear on an e-reader. Now remember, an e-reader, like for example an iPhone or an Android or an iPad, can be viewed vertically or horizontally. So a large tall graphic like appears on my DL would not be suitable for viewing on something that you can make a portrait or landscape. So that's the reason why I've made this. Okay, so just to clarify, it's not appearing on the print version of the brochure. It's just off to one side, and I'm going to include that instead of the front cover graphic. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. Okay, back to the paragraph styles. All right, just to clarify, okay, those are easily set up by just simply formatting your text the way you want it, and then when you do that, you simply choose New Paragraph Style, and it will basically bring up a paragraph style based on whatever you happen to have set. Okay, so in this case it was my body copy style, so it knows that it was Adobe Caslon, you know, on 10 point, 14 point leading, blah, 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 all that stuff. So that's how you set up those paragraph styles. And I won't go into great detail about why they're useful in print base brochures. Suffice to say that why they're useful for what we're doing is this. What you can do when you've set up your paragraph styles is you can, if you just right click on each one of them in turn and edit them. Okay, so I'll just use body copy for the moment. Edit body copy. Down the bottom in version 5.5, not 5, version 5, because you can't do that in version 5, but in version 5.5, you get this option called export tagging. Okay, right down the bottom, export tagging. And one of the options here is ePub and HTML. Its default is set on automatic. What we're going to do, in my case here, I'm going to tell my body copy to be using P. And for the sharp-eyed observers out there, they may notice that that's one of the HTML default text formats. Pardon me. I need another drink. What that's referring to, you'll see there's P, H1, H2, H3, blah, blah, blah. Those things are actually very basic, simple formatting that's used on very basic, simple web pages. And the H stands for heading, P stands for paragraph. So what you can do is you can actually define one of the basic default text formats that essentially will work on just about any device. So by telling this one, for example, my body copy to be the equivalent of P, that means that on any device that it appears, it knows to show wherever I've set body copy to be formatted in the default paragraph formatting. Okay, that means it won't throw in a heading font, it will use whatever the device uses as its basic paragraph format, which is what I want it to do. Okay, so I'm just going to go through and change that for each of my main heading, each of my main styles. Oops, I just changed the formatting then. So I'll just be clear that I'm deselecting my text so I don't accidentally change it when I do this. And I'll do this one at a time. So I'm now editing heading 1, paragraph style, going to export tagging, and I'm going to change my heading 1 style to in fact be the equivalent of H1, which in web text formatting is the largest heading size, which is what I want it to do. I'm going to change my heading 2 in export tagging to be the equivalent of, I'm actually going to change it to heading 3, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I want there to be a little bit of a difference, or more of a difference in fact in size between a default heading 1 and a default heading 2. So that's why I'm choosing heading 3 as my second size font, and this will become clear when you view this in a minute in the ePub reader. And then my picture captions I'm actually going to set to be the equivalent in export tagging of a heading 6, okay, which is the smallest size heading format that you can use in basic HTML. If you happen to know a whole lot about making web pages and using CSS, you can actually go crazy with this stuff and put in some CSS material here in the class, but we're not going to touch that for the moment. I'll just leave that. I'm just using the standard tagging. Rightio, so that's set up. Now, on to the next and probably the most important part of this is getting this thing to export my material from my DL in the right order, okay, that I want to see it appearing in the DL, in the ebook, sorry. Because as just a quick recap, remember the problem we're having is that the ebook is actually seeing this block of text here, the one starting with paragraph, as the first thing that appears. And I don't want it to do that. I want it to see my right-hand side image, in fact, to be the first thing, or at least the information on it, and then I want it to go to here, 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 and then the last two things. Okay, and the way you do that is you use the articles panel. Now, just a reminder, again, this is only available in 5.5, not in version 5. Okay, in version 5, you really can't do this process. You have to, probably the easiest way is frankly just make a second document.